Um, okay, welcome to February. Uh, Month of renewal, rebirth. It's the last full month of winter. So when we come into March, we know that spring is super near. And with all of that being said, especially getting into um, this deeper wintering kind of sensation, especially in the Ottawa area, at least. Sometimes we have this want to go a little bit darker. Sometimes we find ourselves in this um, very reflective place. And sometimes when we go into those places, there is some fear or trepidation. And knowing that we're all very much susceptible to this, no one is immune to those fluxes and waves of life, I wish to share some words from Mark Nepo. Um, I've always enjoyed his writings and stuff, and I've spent the last 2 Sundays tuning into a live webinar with him, and he's just mind-blowingly amazing. And he's speaking to courage, inner resources, and beginning again, and stuff like that. So, coming from his book of poetry called Reduced to Joy, I started flipping through and I found this beautiful little passage, and it's titled The Thing About Fear. So, fear, Fear, if you've done meditation stuff with me before, you will have heard fear stands for forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. So, letting that percolate for a moment as you start to settle yourself a little bit further into a comfortable seat, something that you can sustain for another 10 minutes or so as we go into this meditative portion. Thinking about moments where you may have found yourself caught up in fear and what that meant for you, and maybe how you moved in, around, and through those spaces. And if just thinking about something that elicited fear starts to bring up anxiety in your body or some kind of stress reaction response, then just come back, land in your body, and start to take a few really deep breaths and just let the memory train dissipate a little bit and slow down. So, on this path to rebirth and acknowledging fears that we may have had, may still have, I share the words of Mark Nepo. The thing about fear, we try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way, because it makes what is necessary seem monumental. It makes what is needed seem uncrossable. Yet when we stumble over the line or are loved over the line, or in our exhaustion fall beyond our pain, what we feared was a fall to our death turns out to have been the next step. And just allowing those words to set in. And maybe there was a little pang of recognition where fear caused you to fight tooth and nail, to resist almost relentlessly. And when you finally made it in, around, and through that space of fear, you realized it was indeed the very next step that you needed on your journey. Maybe it led to more lightness, more space, maybe a completely different path you never would have wandered onto, and yet now you find yourself there. And in these reflections, the invitation is just to be with these moments, be with these thoughts and sensations and feelings. Allow them to be what they are. And maybe expand your field of awareness to the larger scope, pulling back the veil, that tunnel vision, and seeing the wide open world. And as you breathe and reflect and sit in these moments, know that each exhale is there to help ground you, stabilize you. And each inhale carries the possibility of more space, freedom, paths waiting to be traveled. Just breathe, feel, allow. And maybe there's a little bit of letting go that starts to happen through these moments. The thing about fear, we try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way, because it makes what is necessary seem monumental. It makes what is needed seem uncrossable. Yet when we stumble over the line, or are loved over the line, or in our exhaustion fall beyond our pain, what we feared was a fall to our death turns out to have been the next step. I invite you to place one hand over your heart. Allow the other hand to stack on top of it and just hold your tender spaces a little bit closer for a few more breaths. Loving ourselves over those lines where we have stumbled and fallen and gotten back up. Small victories that are only recognizable when we are distanced from those moments. A moment to honor yourself for the courage and the willingness to find your way to practice. Releasing the space of our meditation, drawing a deep breath in and letting it go. Hands fall away from the heart, eyes open as they bring some light back in. And let's just come away from our seated postures for a moment. A little bit of free roaming for movement. So you could stretch out. Maybe you want to do a down dog or cow cat or something else. Just give yourself this free rein with your practice here. And if it feels okay to do so, bring soles of feet together, creating a butterfly-like form. If you have a little rear tilt to your pelvis, you might want to wedge up the edge of your blanket or roll the edge of your mat and use that as a little boost underneath your sits bones. So before we come into a more restorative approach to our butterfly, let's just allow for the body to move a little bit. So shifting your weight from one side slowly over to the other, seeing if you can do a bit of a release or feel a little bit of a release coming out of the low ribs towards the low back, side waist. And when you feel these little movements have done some good in your body, exploring the possibility of just tucking your chin towards the chest for a moment. Taking a few slow, deep breaths here. Invite your right ear to make its way over towards the right shoulder. And maybe you play with just walking the left arm out and finding different angles to bring on various little sensations through the neck and the shoulder. And releasing from that, the chin finds its way back towards the chest. Just hang out here for a moment. And then you'll invite your left ear to find its way over towards the left shoulder, with that invitation to possibly play with reaching that right arm out and exploring different angles to elicit different sensations within the neck and the shoulder. And you'll come to let that go. Chin finds its way towards the chest. Breathing here for a moment. If butterfly happens to be a place of contentment for you, you could stay exactly as you are and let yourself curl and fold in more yin-like. If you wish to soften this and you have a bolster or a cushion handy, you could place that support in front of you, maybe on your feet or even higher up on your thighs, and just give yourself an extra little support to hold you, to roll over and take some of the tension out of your body. So, what is it that you need? Where does that preference lie for you so that you are doing what is necessary to care for yourself in this moment? Little by little, as you settle more into stillness, allow your body to continue to soften, to be held rather than pushing, pulling, doing. Where else could you potentially soften in? Dedicating 3 more breaths to this version of butterfly that you have landed in. And whenever you're ready to come out of this, just taking your time, not rushing anything, setting aside any props you may have been using, and find a space that you can hang out in where the body doesn't need to do anything. It doesn't need to be put into a particular shape. Just find the ease, those spaces in between. And then we'll come to rearrange ourselves here. So we're going to come into the prone deer twist or supported twist. So I'm going to swing my legs off to the right side. And since I have my bolster out, I'm going to use the bolster. You could do this without support as well. You just come down onto forearms on the ground. In this case, the bolster is up near the left thigh, and I'm just twisting my torso to find that bolster and maybe come to drape over it. You're just taking your time, finding that spot where you feel supported, you feel you could stay here for quite a while. And gentle twist through the torso. Either supported with props or simply using your forearms, holding yourself at the ground, surrendering in where you can. Seeing if you can allow for some softness to move through. In your breathing, trace the expressions of the inhale and the exhale as they seemingly spiral up and down the spine, following that little rotation that you've worked into your body. Are you content just as you are? Or is there the possibility that one simple, subtle adjustment could open up a whole other line of experience and surrender for you? Although we aspire to stillness, always making room for the seemingly insignificant things to work their way through if necessary. The invitation to dedicate 3 more breaths to this prone twist. And as you come out of your twist, being super gentle and kind with yourself, There could be a very large wave of sensitivities that start to come through. So just honoring that process, feeling into whatever it is you're witnessing moving through your system. And breathe, reminding yourself that the exhales have that grounding, stabilizing quality. And then your inhales bring in the lightness, the space. Renewal and release, all within the life cycle of a single breath. And based on the space that you're in, you may choose to simply flip over, keep your bolster or yourself oriented in the same way, just flip onto your other hip. In my case, I'm just gonna swing everything around so that I'm still facing the video. So now the leg's going off to the left, I'm placing the bolster towards my right thigh with just that little bit of a gap, allowing for the torso to turn towards the support, or maybe it's just forearms coming to the ground. And little by little, making those little adjustments, allowing for yourself to soften in. What would be most skillful, most nourishing for you in this expression of the twist off to the other side? And then making that happen. Surrendering in wherever you can. Your body, heart, and mind have an understanding of what this prone twist is all about. But there may need to be subtle adjustments just based on the history, the story that lives on this side of your body. Eventually finding your way to a place of stillness as best you can. And letting the body be held and supported. And if you find yourself distracted, bring the awareness to that sensation of breath spiraling its way into the twist within your spine, your hips. Feel it dancing up and down. And seeing if you can offer 3 more breaths to your twisting form. Once again, being so kind and gentle with yourself as you come out, bracing for the wave of release that starts to travel through your body, your heart, your mind. Stay connected to the breath, that grounding sensation through your exhales. Keeping yourself very much here as your body journeys these waves of release. And then we'll come to set ourselves up for what might be your final pose for this practice. So if you happen to have block and bolster or block and a sturdy cushion, we're going to do a reclining resting pose by placing that support underneath the upper part of your cushion. If you don't have a bolster, you can take a blanket, fold it and roll it to make that cushion, and maybe it's a big book that goes underneath the head of your cushion or something else, or maybe it's nothing at all. Working with this option, setting up this little bench for yourself to rest on. Let the legs stretch away. Tailbone can wedge almost right up against the edge of the bolster. And then slowly lower the body down. So the spine is being supported. If you find there's too much stress in the low back, then just wiggle the hips, the sits bones away from the edge slightly. And once you feel you're in a place of contentment, whether you're using bolster with the raised head, or maybe it's a blanket running the length of your spine, just pause there for a moment. And then we'll scoop the arms out to the side, hover them above the ground. Bring the arms to reach up overhead like you're trying to grab something that's just out of your reach. Take a beautiful deep breath in here, reaching, reaching, reaching. And then let it go. Release the arms out to the side, respecting any tenderness in shoulders. And gradually surrendering in here. Tender hearts open. And the armor we carry, whether compiled out of fear or this sense of needing composure and facade, let that begin to crack and peel away. Know that it's okay to feel a little bit vulnerable. Know that this is a precious space to be respected, loved. And give yourself the permission to simply rest here. Feel into the breath as it travels your body. Feel into the many surfaces that help hold you in this moment and soften in a little more. Give yourself that permission to be here, to trust the process. Paving the next steps on the paths we walk. The sound of the bowl is not for you to jump. It is simply a call back to a lighter state of awareness. You may choose to stay in your resting form just a little longer. Or maybe you're in a place where you wish to start to stretch and move. taking your time. And perhaps you choose to find your way towards sitting. Perhaps you choose to stay resting as this practice comes to close. Allowing for hands to come and rest over the heart space. Taking a beautiful deep breath in and letting it go. I offer the words of Mark Nepo one last time. The thing about fear, we try to avoid it, distract ourselves, even put others in the way, because it makes what is necessary seem monumental. It makes what is needed seem uncrossable. Yet when we stumble over the line, or are loved over the line, or in our exhaustion, fall beyond our pain, what we feared was a fall to our death turns out to have been the next step. So perhaps in these early days of February, we step forward with newness, and perhaps turning February into fearless February, allowing ourselves to stumble and fall and be loved over many lines, coming out the other side anew. And it's with these words and the close of this practice, we honor ourselves once again for the courage to find our way to the mat, to practice, to breathe, to allow. As we give thanks to all the puzzle pieces that aligned themselves to allow us to connect and share virtual space. The light in me honors the light in you. Namaste.